Thanks for coming. Hi. I think we'll start by showing some films. There was a lot of filming going on throughout the 6 weeks where we worked together. And so hopefully these will give you a taste of some of the things that we've been doing and hopefully generate some questions as well.
Yeah, and we should say that they're kind of chronological. So we've chosen a film from each week of the residency. And sorry to those of you that have already seen weeks 1 to 4.
And some of them are, as you'll see, fast forward to give you a taste of it, but yeah, as time is tight.
Yeah. So I think we're just going to show you so if the screen is split, we are working at the same time in the same space, it's just we're on different camera.
watching this. This time is really, yeah. Yeah, maybe we can turn it down a bit. But, so, where to start? I guess to say, by saying something about how incredible and unusual was the invitation to come together with another artist, someone you didn't know in this way to investigate the process. It's, yeah, a bit scary too. What if we didn't get it at all? It would have been a long 6 weeks. But yeah, that was that. I guess maybe say something about what it has meant to us to work side by side. Or I guess this probably showed quite a lot in terms of different ways in which we connected. Well, I guess one thing it certainly did was through sharing of your process with someone else, it was an opportunity in a way to reassess certain things about what you do and how you do it. And yeah, an incredible sort of opportunity to learn by testing certain things like gravity or resistance using material that's not usual material. So in my case, bodies in space mainly.
And, I mean, as Leila said, we didn't know each other coming into this, so the opportunity to work with somebody from ostensibly a very different discipline that I didn't know, and in two environments outside of my own environment was quite incredible. But I'm going to say something that we said at the end of yesterday, which was actually, this isn't about dance or craft, because we came into this as a dance artist and a craft artist, and actually I have a lot of difficulty with the description craft artist and what that means in the first place. So I think what we've discovered and what we've done is go through a series of ideas about making a material and the way that we move around and do things by testing out, first of all, doing, which you saw very clearly in the film, and also by testing out words through either talking or through putting the two things together, so using activity and movement to gather words, which then became another part of the movement. So really what we've shared is quite an in-depth approach to our two different practices. And I think at the end we've discovered that although we're talking in and around and across disciplines, that it's about a much broader thing. And I think that we agree that there are many things that that's about, but maybe in a wider sense it's about doing as thinking. So really through this we've been doing things, and through the films and looking back at things, some of these films I haven't even seen, so it's quite interesting to see them now, is a process of thinking going on, and a very sort of reciprocal one in this case, that maybe through working side by side, so either together or in the room together, or by trying out the same activity together, or by sharing something of each other's process, and mine ostensibly has stuff, and we decided to use paper stuff mainly, and Leila's, what's your stuff?
Mine is a bodied material really. So, yeah.
And so we're testing out those things together, and in places you could see me testing out quite unknown and Leila testing out quite unknown, because me without material. So it's probably quite rare, and you're very welcome to look around afterwards. We've got lots of images here. Very rare to see me without something in my hand or touching something. But I have been lucky enough to work with somebody who's given me the open space to try out some stuff that maybe I wouldn't have tried out otherwise or ever. And so I think that's an incredible opportunity to test ideas that now I think can't help but become some part of what I do.
We started, one of the things that was important at the beginning was to make sure we didn't take for granted certain use of language. So we spent quite a bit of time kind of sharing with one another words that were significant, but slowly and throughout the process discussing what they really meant. And so it was interesting because it was important to find some commonalities to start off, something to kind of go from. But it was also interesting to look into things deeper and to what does it mean to sketch and actually how do you do it? And this observing of how the other person does that also, how that informs your idea of that day, of sketching and through experience, in a way, what your future doing of that might be. I think it will leave an imprint. Sketching, material, performance, there's certain words like that felt really key to think about and to not take for granted.
And at the same time, we have been in two environments. In the first 3 weeks, we were at a university at the Craft Study Centre in Farnham, and we had a base room, and then we ventured out from there because we had to sort of bust out of there because there wasn't enough room in one sense. But we also, we ended up jokingly calling it CSI Farnham because I think part of both of our practice is looking for evidence of traces of something, of a present, or past present, of something that's just been, or maybe somewhere where something could happen. And so this in and out process has continued here. We've been here with a 2-week break in between, so we've been in the studio here for 3 weeks, and we've been in here quite a lot, but we've been out as well. So we discussed today how really it's been an inside-outside approach, but maybe inside, and inside-outside.
What is inside?
Yeah.
We had this conversation.
That's been very back and forward, and also the sort of the view to outside. By last week, we were clearly thinking about what does this mean outside of here? Does it have any relevance? Does it have any currency in the wider world, and what might that be? And it's been interesting, and several people have pointed it out, but in Farnham we were very much on the ground level, looking out and people passing, and here we're on a higher level looking down, and I think there's something quite interesting in that's happened as well, and what you see going on. So how you look at.
Yes, and then something I'd like to point out also, which has been really important in the process, is a clear intent in documenting it somehow. And so there was Helen and I, but often also other people in the room, and that was an actor in a way in this conversation. And of course, conversations like, this will be a conversation, I'm sure there'll be questions coming in, and so this sort of invitation to look in, and many more like that, and some 4 contributors invited to come and join in the question. But the camera and the angle of the camera and the being observed in this place where we are concerned with process and to delve into the unknown, quickly sort of brought the question of around performance and where that starts when you invite people in, watching, observing. Where does that begin? What's the material of that?
And then, what's the material of that? Some questions for me around the value of material. I'm somebody that trained in handling material, and specifically metal in the first instance, though it's not the only material I use now. But I think for many people who make with material that obviously has a currency in some other way, i.e. it has a value in a monetary sense, and it has an environmental value or consequence, and that we live out all through that material day by day. So metal's a big one of those, but we started to think this week about the economy of the material we've been using. So paper predominantly, and I really like the idea of that economy and what that means and how you might be able to play out a series of ideas about sharing something through two material ideas. And could we, see this morning, could we dematerialise that? I mean, for me, can I work without material is always a question, because you have to ask yourself that when you're using materials that take up resources in some way. So, but working with movement and with the body has really added something to that for me. But this ball of paper here is actually, apart from the paper you can see around here, it's the sum of all the paper we've used during the whole project, and it's bound very tightly together now. And I think for me it's such a forgiving and giving material. It looked like toilet paper yesterday, it really had been through it, and yet it's sort of come back to itself again. And so it's been testing out things about the building, things about volume, things about space and distance, and things about capturing a moment through making a gesture with it or treating it in a certain way.
And I'm thinking, I don't know how we want to go from here, Helen, if it's good to at least give you the go ahead if you want to interrupt, and if you have questions, to not wait till later they come. Having said that, I'll keep talking. But if you have questions at any time, just throw them in. Oh.
It's just part of the observation that when you're thinking about materials thinking or a method of thinking, what we're doing is thinking, it made me think about Richard Wentworth in Compressors, where he talks a lot about that, about thoughtfulness, and that what he's doing is not in a way working as a sculptor in a particular material, but he's talking about working through thinking, trying to express thinking through whichever object will come his way. And he also talks interestingly about escaping process and escaping one's material, and gets quite has difficulty with people calling himself a sculptor, and then they say, well, what's he working? I'm working wood. So, you know, the idea of labelling or sort of box himself in, and I was interested in this situation here, whether that can, in one sense, it's about sharing a process that you come together with something that you both have, and then is it then a way of kind of an opportunity to unload all of that and say, well, then we don't have anything. So I'm interested in this idea of identity and about where identities start and meet with collaboration, and whether actually it's not about, there is no identity at all, because all there is the place where two people come together in the sense of thinking or mindfulness about what one does in the situation of sharing a space. And maybe one has to question about dancing, and like you said, you have to question about whether you handle anything at all. So, you know, in a way that's what I find, as in when you're a statement of motivation, but I was wondering whether you felt, how you felt about the way kind of holding on to something about what I am, and then letting go of that and saying I'm nothing until we start to talk and then there's something. Do we keep any of that, or do we discard all of that? Do we let things build from one thing to another? Do we say it doesn't matter, I'm letting that go and do something else today and something else today? But it's two slightly different questions. One's about development and music.
I don't know if you're aware of Amin Malouf, who's a Lebanese French author who writes about identity, and I shared this with Helen, and he speaks of the beautiful complexity of one's individual identity or collective, as part of collective, what that is, and how it's helpful to recognise the complexity of that. And I think I agree with that. And in a way, I think coming into this, we were reflecting this morning, I felt it was important to know what you had to offer, in a way. Jumping into this big unknown, to know what was there available for you to share, what you didn't know, and mainly there were a series of questions about how you were making, what your interests were, and recognising that there's this marginal space. We've been speaking of frame, of margins and borders, and of being one foot on the other side of the border, say, the edge of the page. And it feels like it kind of somehow links to what you're saying. There is a question about categories and when they're helpful and when they're not, and how they can be.
I suppose also kind of what I didn't mention was that the notion of come together was in a way a fabricated situation.
Yeah.
It was a situation set up by an outsider who created that, and that interested me as well. What is it that prompts artists to come together, to work together, to come from different areas of work?
Yeah.
Is it the idea, maybe there is one sort of vision of one person that drives it to find somebody they feel, and then from there everything is open to question. So I was also interested in that as well. I'm not digressing, but it's a sort of the scary notion of actually we didn't really choose each other. We put together, and it's a vision of someone else. So what's the relevance of us here? Or what's the relevance of the idea?
I think actually, I think it has been really refreshing being put together, because it's probably the first time that has ever happened to me, and yet I work with quite a lot of people. And because actually all of what you said before, I think we've gone through, and we've unpacked enormous amounts of stuff. And actually I think then what came back together for me was a common identity of space and time. So everything seemed to be being played out through space and time, and we've shared a lot, and we've also shared silly things. And one of the things that we looked at early on was, I don't know if anybody knows it, but Father Ted doing his cow routine about perspective. This little toy cow is small, and the one out of the window is far away. And to be honest, it just keeps coming back, because we are thinking about those notions of distance, space and time, and I think that for me that became the common identity. So in a sense it's been very joyful to be able to throw away some of the labels that are there that bind you, but also perhaps as you get further into your work. So 20 years in, for me, I don't see it as the defining one. The one that I trained in at the age of 20, I don't see that as the defining boundary. And I know that, but sharing that with somebody from somewhere else is good.
Yeah. I guess there's a trust in the curator. If you are going to go, and there's that implied, I think. So it was terribly exciting, and aware of the risk that actually it might be difficult, but again, what might be found if it was really hard? I'm sure it felt like it was just a great option for learning something about what I do.
And then sort of challenging yourself. So I think that we've spent very concise time together. It's been very it's been very open, but we've worked quite hard at this, and it's been at the end of the day when I've gone off and sort of unpacked that. What is it? What am I doing? What is it? But I think it's incredibly refreshing. So who knows what it will be by next week?
If it's any help, I'm obviously fascinated in all aspects of collaborative getting together, whatever that word means, and it means something different to every person and to every moment that it happens. And gradually over the last few years, I realised that I think that if you are able to reach each other much, the word lower isn't right, but earlier in your development, then there is more likelihood that you'll be able to have a closer conversation. In other words, don't meet each other and expect things to start from the day of meeting and go forward. The day of meeting actually is the opportunity to go back and back and back and rediscover the things that are incredibly important to you and discover in others those things which are relevant or where you can have information exchange. And noticing things regardless of the material that you may have chosen that has led you up to here, but noticing maybe why you developed that way or what impact that material has had, and if by chance, even for a brief chance, you're able to reimagine that through somebody else's journey, what can that do? And then after that, you may be able to have really good discussions about what you might want to do together or side by side. Because I mean, the idea is that they will go on from here, but again, without us necessarily forcing a prediction. Something far more exciting than what any of us might have imagined, I think, will probably emerge. It could happen in so many different ways, but it will happen.
And I think it's also good to make an argument for this kind of time, like you say, this time we come in at this point, and for any of us to make that argument. If you're an artist wants to work with somebody and you don't know why, you haven't got a project, you haven't got a vision, actually, but maybe there's something that you just like to explore and be given, have that time and given to it. That is that's.
I mean, any argument about taking time, I feel, is a good one.
Yeah.
I know it's an economy, but that's what's going to help work. Is having time somehow,
and time to be quite friction.
Yes.
Because the time
tension
is always so precious that you don't have friction and always be kind and always be generous, always be. And actually, sometimes you just need to hit back and you need to be more interventionist in a way. I mean, I'm interested in my Padma is the quality of time has to be allowed to have those things happen and then to overcome them and go on from there.
I think the idea of being thrust together in this way, although it's hinted at as being somewhat unnatural, isn't that far off the mark from average daily living where we are thrust together by chance in all sorts of working situations in the sites where we build our identities and interactions. So it's extended and you have the space, but it's not actually that far off the mark of who we end up working with in different work situations and all sorts of things.
But the kind of the tragedy, in my view, is when marriages are made between artists by curators for, I'm going to say economic reasons, but that's not quite the right word. But where I remember a project with 3 very, very high profile, very, very interesting artists, where of course, because of who they were and what it was, the whole thing had to be co-produced and sold around the world before it was even made. And actually what they should have done is get into a studio together and then maybe show something informally at the place or here to find out if they had something to speak with each other about, and I didn't think they did. What I find interesting here, if I may just butt in now, is I think it's fantastic the way, obviously, you each, from what you say, from what I see, you each had to figure out how to articulate something about yourself to somebody else who doesn't work in the medium, and you've obviously both taken something back from the other person for yourself. But just following on from what Sue was saying, how can you articulate how far along the line you think you got and where you think that might go? Because I'm a presenter, so I don't know where that might go. If you can't, that's fine. I absolutely.
It does feel like at the moment we are. I think it was when it felt really fabulous, like to start this last week in a way as we did the first. So with the same sort of supposed to be, thinking, oh God, we have to do this and that and this and that, and get to this magnificent end point by the end. It was so freeing to think that we could approach it with the same curiosity, and so I guess it means that now I've got a lot of distilling to do and reflecting to do, and so it feels like I know because I already see it in conversations I have outside of this and the reflections I have on my way here that it is having an impact on me and will have ripples in what I do, and I also know that I want to continue this conversation, and it seems like just yesterday, this morning, things are starting to be clearer as to what shape it may take. And one thing that I feel it has particularly allowed me to imagine my work at this very early stage in a way. It's to be involved in this has allowed me to imagine my work maybe outside of my default settings of a theatre black box. And not that I hadn't thought about that before, but just to be in it and to be experiencing what it might be to work over a duration, or to just where it might be. That's the, yeah, that feels like it's really important.
Can I ask you something about what you actually learned about the process of collaborative reflection? First of all, congratulations on the blog, which I think is terrific,
So wonderful.
however it's come about. But clearly the act of documenting, it has a component of theme that comes from what we've been talking about together. But you've also been clearly reflecting, and the question that I have is the way in which you've been reflecting materially altered, the substance of thought as a function of dealing with somebody from different disciplines? And so are there particular things that strike you about it?
Well, we've been doing, yeah. That's it. We've done a huge amount of reflecting, haven't we? I mean, I would say it's been part of the work.
Yeah.
You know, we've been going round and around and questioning, a huge amount of questions, and I think I don't know whether it answers reflection, but how we've gathered words and then reflected on them has been really interesting. So we've used the space and the paper. I think I came with rolls of paper, and they're kind of everyday things, a lot of them, till rolls and fax rolls, and it was like the idea that maybe we could unravel or unroll, that was part of it, but that we could also define space, frame space, lay things out but maybe cover them up. I was very aware that maybe, even coming in here now, that there's stuff, they're laying out of stuff, but we used the paper and moving in space to gather words from the environment, because I'm very interested about place and environment and what words we could gather together in different ways as a joint experience. Yeah. And those words are gathered by travelling around the space and in different ways, and laying the words down on the paper by gathering a word as you pass something, or a thought, or a feeling. And so then those words together became a shared moment. So the reflection then on those, I think, perhaps the reflection for me through, sorry I'm having to go through all of this to remember what to do, through moving through the space, actually I can now somehow remember a movement from them rather than just a word or an object. I have an added movement in some of the things that we've gathered. So we've also got kind of, it's hard to put a word on it, but maybe scores, things that have happened over time, and through looking back at them, I can remember a shared gesture or speed of movement.
So is that about noticing something in a different way?
Yes, and
So
noting it in a different way.
And then maybe selecting something in a different
Yeah.
way in terms of what the input to your own decision-making process is?
Yes.
Yes, and there was a key moment between farming and
Yeah.
arriving here.
Yeah.
Was the second of what was an unpacking of what we've done after 2 weeks away from each other. And as Helen was just saying, noticing what information was in those rolls of paper about the mood of the day, about the task, about speed, and then making choices from that as to what to do next.
I mean, for me, it's added the memory and remembering of movement, definitely. I know it's different to how it was before. I'm not sure if I can articulate it yet, but I would use photography obviously making marks, making objects, finding objects, all sorts of means. And I use walking as well in my practice, so that's movement, but there's an added other movement that now I'm remembering stuff through. And some of that's very shared, actually. But I wonder what that will be like when we're apart, when this is.
Sorry, you've been waiting for me to know.
Can I ask a question? I suppose it's a little bit about the dynamics between you both and thinking about guesting and hosting, and that at certain points, because you were both here and in the other location as kind of guests, but then at certain points you must have taken a lead. I think you might be saying that you brought in paper. So at certain points did the space become like one of your spaces where you're within one of your practices and the other one was a kind of guest in the practice?
Yeah.
Was it kind of simultaneous? And
It was momentary.
Yeah.
Invitations, yeah, definitely.
We sort of, I'd say we sort of used shared space and then shared, maybe some of the films you can see a kind of somebody hosting maybe an activity.
Yeah.
So some of that happened and then that became all shared. So there was an initial sort of,
And was there a politeness, and did you try and get around that? Because I know when I've been in body collaborations that at first you can be terribly polite and that's quite obstructive. Or
It didn't feel that way, I'm sure we were. But,
6 weeks could introduce quite a bit of.
yeah.
I remember saying, actually, I wanted to do this, but now we've been chatting for half an hour. No, we can't do it. You know, I don't want to. We need to start the day with that. Not after coffee. Just do it tomorrow. But you know, and it hasn't been because this is a dance space that I didn't feel like I was the master for the space for that length of time.
Yeah, I didn't mean that so much. I mean, when you're kind of in the space, the kind of dimensional conceptual space of one of your
we definitely did that, yeah.
And it's interesting where it crosses.
I think we were polite to each other, but we were saying earlier, we were having a bit of a debrief, and we were saying that actually there's been an honesty. In fact, we've asked each other quite direct questions right from the start. And actually, I think that comes from not knowing each other from the outset as well. It laid down a very clear area where we could be direct and ask stupid things, things that I didn't know. You could easily, I didn't feel self-conscious about saying, oh, what's that, or, what.
It feels like it's such a, quite a big thing. The act of just saying, okay, yes, let's do this thing was the biggest step in a way. And once you know the other person is going the same and decided this similarly that they were going to this unknown. I think it set out this quite open.
I think, because it was that early stage of our knowing each other, we were able to build a trust, and I can only speak for myself, but I was able to do some things that I didn't think I would do at the outset, because it felt that I could, that I wasn't going to make a fool of myself, or it didn't matter if I fell over, or I could have injured myself, I suppose.
Or me. But
I was curious when you spoke about, you said something about remembering movement in a new way. That made me curious about, has anything changed in you with regard to movement, your movement, when you work in your own medium, or how you make your marks, or how the physicality, is there any other physical?
Well, one thing is that I've been working barefoot, which I don't do in my studio, and I probably can't do afterwards either. So, but and on the floor, it's rare for me to work on the floor. So there's been a physicality in the sense that I'm getting feedback through my feet. So I've really thought about that. I think that's really added something. I think sort of duration and moving down or across something, around something has changed for me, and a whole body thing. You know, one of our collaborators, so one of the 4 people that's come in, is also a sculptor maker, and she even was talking about just about her hands, and immediately, quite early on in this process, I started to think, gosh, you know, we're so hand-centric. And actually you're not, because you're navigating everything with your whole body, and so it's made me think much more about navigation. At the point where we're at a table working, that's early on in a textile studio, that's my normal mode and environment, a table of a certain height. And somebody pointed out that I seem to navigate it without even having to look, and you know, it's a known landscape. I hadn't really thought about that properly. So that whole thing, yeah, it has changed something.
Shifted focus.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's up fast. That was a good time. Is there anyone else who has a question? Otherwise, I think we'll open up the shutters and let everyone have a look around
Yeah,
and
please.
carry on asking questions about the stuff that's in, and have a look at some of the photos, which there's an awful lot of material that hasn't gone onto the blog yet, and we've got a huge task ahead of us of editing out and deciding what we show. But also, I think we've decided we'll leave to other little projects in themselves. So hopefully we'll let everyone know when that happens.
And we just have to say massive thanks to Kathy and Gorm, who designed the wonderful website, and to Gorm, who's taken all the photography. And that, I mean, at points it has been, we were saying side by side. Also, Alison's been with us all the way, so thank you to you. And then to Sue, thank you so much.
I'm ever curious what happens. It's like not wanting to know, and yet gradually real information, I mean some information has to flutter away, but real information comes in, and that's just got to be a joy for not just these art forms. I'm going to sound pretentious in a minute, sorry. But it just feels as though there's a useful tool to be going on there, and we would love to make it work on those films that we have. Thank you two very much. Very, very generous, and actually very, very brave.
Yeah.